Hi, I'm Anthony Originello, CEO of the Chartered Professionals in Human Resources for BC and Yukon. We represent more than 8,000 members, and as the organization dedicated to advancing the HR profession through education, advocacy, awareness, professional development, as well as our recognized and impactful CPHR designation, we are proud to be a sponsor of this show. We have been the voice of the HR profession since 1942. Learn more about us at cphrbc.ca.
In this edition of Careers That Matter, I'm joined by David Blackmon, who has a Substack handle, Energy Absurdity. David, welcome. Can you give us a little sense of what your work is? Like, how do you describe what you do these days?
Well, I don't describe it as work. It's hardly work. I do what I love to do, which is write about energy and talk about energy. I spent 40 years in the energy business here in the United States and had an opportunity to retire at the age of 60, a fairly young age. And since then, I've been kind of semi-retired, and all I do is write and talk about energy, and I'm very fortunate to be able to do it at places like Forbes and the Daily Caller and the Telegraph and some magazines. And it's a very, very lucky place to be in life, and get to do it all from my home. So it doesn't even involve a lot of travel.
So what does a typical day look like for you to be able to produce the content that you generate?
Yeah, I wake up early. I'm up at around 5 o'clock in the morning, Central Time, where I live in Texas. And, I get up and have a cup of coffee and get online and see what's been going on. And I mean, I don't really ever have a lot of structure to what I do. I just browse X and other websites and try to see what the hot topics are. And if there's an angle on a story that I feel like I can add some value to, then I'll pick that to write about and try to hammer out 700 to 1,000 words on the subject and see if the editors at one of my publications wants to have it and go from there.
So are you, in essence, selling your pieces then to them?
Yes, doesn't generate a lot of money, but enough to make it worthwhile. And I do maintain a Substack newsletter at blackmon.substack.com that is a subscriber site, and I generate a little income from that. And I was fortunate to save pretty well during my career. My wife did the same, and so we, it's a nice way to have some extra income and do something I like to do and I have done for a long time. I actually started writing about energy when I was in the industry 30 years ago and have been doing it ever since.
You must have to employ a considerable amount of self-discipline, though, to keep going. Because when you're on your own like that, there's nobody that's saying, okay, David, get going. It has to be you. Right. You have to be the boss that's the motivator of the employee, who you are as well.
Right. Yeah, I've always been pretty self-motivated. Fortunately, my parents, I think, took the time to instill that in me, and the value of working hard and frankly, the need to work hard to be successful in life. And that has always stayed with me throughout life and served me pretty well.
So to be able to do this, to have a credible voice, you have to have some credentials. Let's sort of go back over your career. When you were leaving secondary school, did you have a sense of what you wanted to do?
Well, not really. I was a drummer in high school, and a pretty good one. And I thought I was going to be a music major when I went to the University of Texas. And I realized I couldn't play any other instrument other than the drums, and that wasn't going to work out for me. So one day I was in the library and picked up a copy of U.S. News and World Report. And it, at the time, this was 1975, said that the hottest major on college campuses today is accounting. And I thought, well, I'm pretty good at math. I can do accounting, or math. I can do accounting. And that was literally my entire thought process on what major to switch to. And so I came out of college as an accountant, and the first 10 or so years of my career, that's what I did. But then I migrated first into regulatory affairs and then into government affairs for the last 20 years of my career.
So when you were accounting, were you working for one of the large accounting firms or a smaller private firm?
No, my whole career was in the oil and gas business. I worked for a variety of different companies, from some of one of the biggest, Shell, to a couple of small independent producers back down in South Texas early in my career. And in between, I worked for a great company called Burlington Resources that is now part of ConocoPhillips, and was there for the preponderance of my career in the oil and gas business. And fortunately, that company had a very visionary CEO named Bobby Shackles, and a fantastic management team that gave its employees, a lot of freedom to define our role within the company. And I have always had a real interest in public policy, and was able to, work my way from accounting, which I never really much enjoyed, but became a really useful platform to migrate over into regulatory and government affairs.
Specifically, what kind of regulatory work were you doing?
So most of what I did was related to the Department of Interior here in the United States, related to leasing, royalty payments, access to federal lands, offshore permitting, a variety of different things, all of which are housed at the Department of Interior. And we were working on a couple of pieces of legislation related to royalty payments to the federal government. And that was how I ended up migrating over into the government affairs department at Burlington Resources. And we were actually successful with those two bills. And so that didn't hurt anything, that we had good results. And it was just a really great learning process in terms of, I also ended up representing the company in various different states, Texas and Louisiana and New Mexico, Oklahoma, Wyoming. And it was just a tremendous exposure to the full scope of the business and how public policy impacts everything we do in the industry. And that, of course, served to give me a pretty good knowledge base on how what happens in Washington or Austin, Texas, impacts a company drilling wells out in the Permian Basin. And by and large, that's what I write about. In recent years, I've expanded the scope of what I write about to, encompass what's happening in the energy transition, or more accurately, what's not happening in the energy transition. And, it's been a real learning process for me, and luckily facilitated by the jobs I was able to hold during my career.
So our target audience for this program are young people who are about to start their career, and they go, "What do I want to be?" And as you say, when you came out of high school, you're thinking, "Well, I want to be a drummer." And what you're doing right now, you're not drumming in a rock and roll band, but you are out beating the drum. That's a good little pun on my behalf.
Yeah.
But what would you say was a characteristic that you possess that allowed you to continually explore new opportunities and expand your horizons throughout your career?
Yeah, so I've been really lucky in life. I from childhood always had a pretty expansive sense of curiosity. I was always interested in learning about different things. And I'll also have, for whatever reason, I don't even know why, just have had a pretty low stress personality. So I don't get too excited, or I don't have a lot of high highs and low lows in my personality. And that's, I think made me more able to take on different roles that I'm not necessarily really familiar with when I start, but has given me the ability to get up to speed pretty quickly. And in the government affairs part of things, I was able really to be effective in that role because I did have a good understanding of the business. So many people think, well, if I want to be in government affairs, I'll major, I'll do a public affairs major, a public policy major, and come out of school, go to work for a lobbying firm and become a government affairs professional. But those folks are, you don't really understand what you're lobbying for. You're going to be so much more effective if you get into a business, learn the business, and then find a way to become part of the government affairs department within that business, because then you can talk to a state representative or a regulator at one of the federal agencies that you deal with, and actually know what you're talking about firsthand, with firsthand knowledge. And that really makes you a lot more effective in what you're doing.
Well, thank you for taking some time to give us a glimpse into your work and contributions and your career path. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.